How's it going? This is Hoiman, and today we're taking a look at the Dissidia Final Fantasy Trading Arts Set 2 figures. So this is the main box itself. So at the top you have the names of the series that these figures are from, and then it shows which characters are in this set. And then pretty much the same on the front, and then same for both sides as well. And then the back is the same, but you have some legal stuff as well. And then the bottom as well. So to open the box, since this is originally a trading arts set, they usually want you to open the box by the dotted line here. But I like to open it from the front, just for collection purposes. And then inside you get 6 of these small boxes, and then each one contains each separate figure inside. So the front you have illustrations of all the figures together, a logo on the side, legal stuff on this side, the bottom, and then the top, and then the back it just shows more pictures of the figures. And then you open each figure, and then each box just contains the separate figures, and it also comes with instructions on how to put the figures together. For Firion and Terra, since these are the European versions, they already come pre-assembled in the packaging, so they're already ready to display when you open them. So taking a closer look at Firion, I think overall this figure looks pretty nice. Most of the detail is pretty much present. There are some details that were missing which I did add in, which I'll point in later. But in terms of the accuracy and the sculpt, I think they did a pretty decent job overall. So looking at his face, I feel that they have captured the likeness of his character pretty well. And then his hair and the kind of hat he's wearing is nicely sculpted. And then all the individual paints are very nice and clean for the most part. And then there's like darker shadings throughout his hair as well, to bring out the detail. And then the ponytail is a softer material, but it does still feel quite delicate, so you have to be careful of that. And then down to his armor, pretty nicely sculpted overall. Not really a whole lot of paint detail going on, but it is clean for the most part. And then looking at his sword, it's nicely sculpted with the finer details on the handle, but I will say the gold across the blade, I painted that on myself since I felt it was really lacking in detail. And to make it more true to the illustration that he's based on, I just thought I added it in myself. And then looking at the shield, really well sculpted, and then the detailing is nice as well. And then his cape is really nicely sculpted with all the different folds and creases, and then there's darker shades in between the folds to really bring out the depth. And it is a solid piece as well, but it's not really that back heavy. And then of course you have the bow and arrow as well. I think it would have been cool if they added in the string for it, but I can see why they didn't. But the bow itself is well sculpted and detailed. Same for the axe on the other side. And then you have his lance that he wears on his back, and then a blade at the tip that sticks behind. It's a nice metallic silver finish. And then the cloth, like the cape, is really well sculpted with a lot of shading going on. And then the legs themselves, very well detailed with each knife on either leg. And although this is quite a nice looking figure overall, I do have quite a few gripes with it. So first off, my main gripe was that he was missing the metallic gold detailing on his blade, which really kind of made the blade look a bit cheap without it, but it's a very minor gripe. And then the second gripe is that when I first ordered this figure, he didn't include this blade, it was just outright missing, so I had to get a replacement for that. So there is some QC issues going on when they package the figure together. But I think my biggest gripe is that if you look at his legs, this leg is clearly shorter than this leg. And that's because this leg isn't quite fully assembled all the way in there. So it makes his leg really unbalanced and really creates a huge gap on the stand. So it is very off-putting. So this is something to keep in mind of when if you do decide to purchase this figure. Next we have Terra. Looking at her face, I feel that they did a pretty good job at her face. Looks pretty much like the character. And then the hair has a lot of detailing and dynamic sculpt going on as well. It has this kind of metallic shine to it, almost like a glossy finish, but it's actually just kind of metallic paint for the shading. So it creates a nice effect for the hair. And down to her outfit. The red is a nice matte red finish with lighter tones to bring out the definition in her arms and body. And then you have the nice flowery detailings on the torso as well. And then the cape, really nicely sculpted. Lots of shading of tones from the yellows to the purples. And then you have the nice flower patterns on there as well. And it continues on to the inside of the cape as well. For her waist, there's a lot of detail going on with all the clothing here. Lots of layers and nicely painted on for the most part as well. And then you have the knife here, really well sculpted. Same for the purple cloth here. And then you move on to the sword, which looks okay for the most part. It does look a bit cheap at times. I don't know if it's just because like this hand is kind of a different tone to the rest of her skin color, and then the weapon itself just kind of seems like it's painted on with kind of more basic paints, so it kind of makes it look a bit cheap. But I don't know, there's just something about it. But other than that, I feel that it still does work for the most part. Her legs, same sort of shading going on throughout the whites, and you have the pink flowers as well. And then the shoes, which was probably the weakest part of the statue. Originally, all the gold parts were this kind of, it was painted in this kind of really cheap looking yellow, and it just made the whole figure really kind of cheap looking. So I decided to paint over the yellow with metallic gold to kind of make it more accurate to the illustration. And then overall, I feel it does kind of add a bit more to the overall figure. But I think my main gripes with this figure is, like I mentioned, sometimes the sword looks a bit cheap. The yellow on the shoes was really painted with cheap yellow. And then for whatever reason, she seems to have difficulty standing on her base. Like the holes fit on the pegs, but she just has difficulty balancing on the base for whatever reason. But it still works for the most part. Moving on to Cecil, I feel this is a really solid looking figure. It just has a lot of bulk and sort of weight to the overall figure that kind of adds more of a premium feel to this figure. So for the face, I feel that they have captured the likeness of the character pretty well. And then of course you have this really nice silver hair with darker shades in between the strands to bring out the details. And then onto his armor, really nicely sculpted. It's very busy and abstract, and overall there's just a lot of detail going on. But for the most part, I think they did a good job at sculpting it all in, adding all the different details here and there. And then the paintwork is pretty clean for the most part. And then the cape is very well sculpted, has a lot of different tones and shadings going on. And then the weapon he's holding, very nicely sculpted, and it's very well detailed as well. And then these thinner parts are more solid, so you have to be careful you don't break them. And then moving down to his legs, really well sculpted, nice sculpting in the individual lines of the armor. And then you have his sword on his back as well. Well sculpted and detailed. Again, this is a solid piece, so you have to be careful of that. And then the inside of his cape has the nice yellow detail as well. And in the shoes, you have a nice kind of gold crowns. It looks very effective. For Bartz, for the most part, again, he's really well sculpted and detailed. So looking at the face, again, I think they have captured the likeness pretty well. And then you have his hair, nicely sculpted. And then there's very little dark tones of shading as well throughout his hair. And then moving down to his outfit, they got the straps here. They're very nicely painted and sculpted on. And then his clothes just have a lot of creases and folds. So it looks very effective. And then the shoulder armor here is a nice metallic gold paint. Very well detailed. And then his cape, again, really well sculpted. Lots of different tones and shadings going on. And then for his waist, a lot of detail going on here. I especially like how the yellow pattern is all folded up here, but it still lines up pretty well and naturally. So it's very cool effect going on. And then again, it has all the creases and folds, and then you have the belt as well, which is packed full of detail. And you have his little knife here as well, but you can't remove it or anything. Moving on to a sword, just like with Terra's, there's something about it that makes it look a bit cheap. I don't know if it's just because it's just one bold red color and then there's no sort of shading or metallic sort of paint going on. It just makes it look a bit cheap. But I will say over Firion, it's nice that he added the gold paint across the blade, so that's a nice touch. But overall, there's just something about it that looks a bit cheap to me. Same for the hand, it's a different tone compared to the rest of his skin color, so it is a little bit off-putting. And then moving down to his legs, again really nicely sculpted, all the paintwork is nice and clean for the most part as well. And I do have a few gripes with this one, so firstly is that his weapon looks a bit cheap sometimes. The second is that the cape has a lot of difficulty staying on. It tends to pop off really easily. And then the third is just the pose overall. So if you just look at it from the side, he looks very bent back. It just almost looks a bit unnatural. I know it's accurate to how he appears on the illustration, but from other angles it just looks really unnatural. But it isn't really anything major. So overall I'd say Bartz is a very nice looking figure overall. And then finally we come to Sephiroth, which is really nicely sculpted and detailed. And because he's mainly wearing all black, it is quite difficult to kind of see all the different details and shading going on. But there is like a very dark blue kind of shading that goes throughout his black clothes. So it's very subtle, but it's nice that they kind of added more detail to it. So looking at his face, I feel that they have captured the likeness of him pretty well. And then his hair is really nicely sculpted. And then it flows all the way to the back. And then these thinner parts are softer material, so you don't have to worry too much about those breaking. But overall the hair kind of has this nice metallic silver going on. And then there's all the dark tones of shading as well. So his hair overall looks really nice. And then moving down to his outfit. The cloth on his arm here is really nicely sculpted and painted on. Same for the shoulder pads. Nice clean paintwork on the different patterns. And then his belt has a lot of detail going on. Same for these straps here. And then you have the kind of belt buckle parts that runs along his coat. And then the coat itself has a lot of nice creases and folds. And like I already mentioned, there's this really dark blue shading that goes on throughout the coat. And then underneath the coat, you have this feathery detail as well, which looks really nice. And then it's a nice shading of the yellow to the pink. And then the shoes are very simply sculpted, but they do look nice. And then we move on to the sword, which is very long in contrast to Sephiroth's body. And it is a somewhat softer material, so you don't have to worry too much about it breaking. But it is a nice metallic finish for the blade, so it does look very nice and effective. And although the blade sticks very far away from the body, it's very light, so it's not going to weigh down the figure or anything. So my final thoughts, overall this is quite a solid set of figures, and it's nice to finally have some sort of merchandise for characters like Firion, Cecil and Terra, and also Bartz, since they don't really get a whole lot. So it's nice to see them actually get some representation in the figure department. And overall, although these are quite small figures, there's a lot of detail packed into them. A lot of different paintwork, shading, and then the sculpt work is very impressive for the most part in all these figures. There are some downsides, like I mentioned, with each individual figure, but for the most part they are very well, nicely made figures. And I will say it is a bit of a shame that they opted to go make Sephiroth instead of Onion Knight, because if they included Onion Knight then you would have a complete set of the heroes. But I can understand why they went with Sephiroth, since he's the much popular character, and overall I do feel that they did a really good job on him. So overall, if you're a fan of these characters or the games, then I can recommend these figures, but just be aware that there are counterfeit versions of these figures. And from what I've seen, although these figures are quite old now, the prices of them hasn't really gone up too much, so you should be able to find them for a decent price. But that's my review. Thank you for watching and enjoy some pictures.